My name is Scott. I'm the second of Bob and Marianne's 3 children, which include my older brother Tom and my younger sister Robin. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today and spending time with my family to remember and honor my father, Robert Corley. And I want to give a special thanks to Richard and Ron and David, 3 of my father's favorite students, and their colleague Rick, for coming and performing today. It's such a tribute to my father, and represents him so well. And you fulfilled the promise that my father saw in you. And it's great to hear your stories about his influence on you, a dimension that I didn't fully grasp. My father loved music, and it was a centerpiece of his life. He was very good at playing the trombone and teaching music to young people. My father and his older brother, John, were inspired by their father's love of music. Although Father and Uncle John were very different people, they shared their passion for music their entire lives and had a strong bond as a result. In my family, it wasn't a question of whether you would play an instrument, but a question of which one you would play. I was inspired by Handel's water music and chose the French horn. I didn't have father's or mother's gifts for music and eventually abandoned the horn. However, the foundation of music I received from my upbringing enriched my life. When a classical piece of music came on the radio, Father would sometimes quiz me, asking me who the composer was. As a result, I have a pretty good knowledge for a layperson of the classical repertoire. Although they supported us in our musical training, Father and Mother never pressured us to pursue a future in music. I believe it was important to them that we children be free to go in the direction that our interests and talents would take us. There were a number of times when I was particularly proud of Father's accomplishments. As we know, he was music director for many years in Weston, Massachusetts. And during one of those years, he put on the Northeast District, as Richard knows well, put on the Northeast District School Music Festival in Weston. And years later, actually a few years ago, he pointed out to me that it took the help of a lot of people who were very generous with their time and efforts to make it such a big success. Music groups from every town, from schools in every town in the district, came to perform and compete. Performances took place in schools, churches, and halls all over town. It was just an incredible event. You know, the police were directing traffic. There were so many people involved. It was just a huge town event. And the festival culminated with a big parade. I remember walking in stride, and I was just a little kid. I remember walking in stride with Father's high school marching band down the main boulevard, so proud of what he had achieved. When Father retired from Weston, he received a tribute that showed how much his students appreciated and loved him. On a spring evening at our home in Wellesley, we heard the distant beat of drums. We walked outside to see the Weston High School marching band marching down our long street to stop in front of our house. As the neighbors gathered around, the band serenaded Father as we stood in the front yard. Father was deeply honored. During summers, Father played trombone in the orchestra at Carousel Theater in Framingham, Massachusetts. Carousel was a theater in the round, I guess they had those back then, under a giant tent. Big-name entertainers came to perform there. People that Father played for included Robert Goulet and Carol Lawrence, Danny Kaye, Liberace, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Andy Williams, Stevie Wonder, and Tom Jones. Father reported that women did indeed throw their underwear on stage at Tom Jones. Particularly exciting was when Jack Benny came to Carousel for a series of performances. It turned out that his conductor took ill. It was a great honor that Father was asked to conduct in his place. Before the first performance, Father met with Mr. Benny in his dressing room to prepare for the show. Aside from music, other things that Father loved included mountains. This was another thing that he inherited from his father. Grandpa Corley loved to hike in the mountains of New Hampshire, and so did Father. A high point for all of us was staying at Stinson Lake in New Hampshire for 1 or more weeks each summer. It seemed that Father knew the names of all the mountains that we could see from the lake and on drives around the countryside. The Stinson Lake tradition went way back. When they were kids, Father and Uncle John were taken to Stinson by their parents, Grandma and Grandpa Corley. Another thing that Father loved was sailing, and so did Uncle John. We had a small sailboat named the Squall. At Stinson, we would race around the lake in our boat against Mr. Grimes and his boat. It was a lot of fun. Mr. and Mrs. Grimes and their family lived 3 cottages down. Mr. and Mrs. Grimes were musicians. Actually, Mr. Grimes, he was so great, he taught us how to sail and how to walk through the woods quietly and so forth. But he had been a music teacher, and then he was a German teacher. And so there was so much music happening at Stinson Lake. We would go in the evenings, sometimes we would go over and listen to live string quartets and at the Grimes cottage, and Father would play the cello part on his trombone. This is a small thing, but I thought it would be fun to mention, and the close family members here will know what I'm talking about. Father had quite a sweet tooth. He would keep little bowls of candies in the kitchen and dining room and stashes of chocolate and ice cream in the fridge. In fact, when I arrived this past Friday, there was a small bowl of Necco wafers on the dining table. A particular favorite of his were pink wintergreen mints. He called them pink candies, or simply pinks. And speaking of things that Father loved, of course I have to talk about family. Father loved his wife, he loved his children. I have to get through this too. He loved his grandchildren, and he loved the extended family that he and Mother became closer to over the years. When I think of Father, 2 words come to mind: commitment and integrity. He stayed deeply committed to his beloved wife, Marianne, over their 65 years of marriage, and he was committed to helping his children get established in their lives and maintaining his relationship with us over the years. He also valued integrity and honesty in his work and in his family life. Probably like most men of his generation, Father had been uncomfortable with his expressions of affection and closeness. It took my own personal growth as an adult to come to recognize how much he loved us. As I matured and became more self-confident, I started using the word love with Father, and he quickly responded. The love had been there all the time. He just wasn't used to expressing it. Over the years, it became more and more natural. Over the past several months, we would often close our phone conversations using the word love. At the end of one of our conversations during the week before he died, I said, "I love you, Father." And he responded with, "I love you, Scott." We love you, Dad. We will miss you.